Hello, welcome to Ask Sam Something. I know we were going to call it Ask the Safety Guy, but some of the questions I was getting in were a little bit beyond safety. And so I decided to change it up and go with Ask Sam Something, or, if that's too much of a mouthful, you can just shorten it down to ASS. Okay, we're going to change that. Let's do Ask Sam anything. There we go. Ask Sam anything, ASA. And like I said, we were getting a lot of questions in that didn't necessarily have to do with safety, which is fantastic. That's fine. If you have questions about like trucking, which I've got years of experience in, business, again, I got years of experience. And I know you're asking yourself, how could this young guy have so many years of experience in trucking? Well, you are too kind, but I am probably a little bit older than you think. It's just probably my skincare routine that's throwing you off. But if you have questions about business, trucking, or any of my other interests, motorcycles or Jesus, or even toothpick making, I mean, you can feel free to ask those questions. If you're in connection with me on LinkedIn, you can send me a message. You can leave a comment below here and ask questions that way. There's a number of ways to get a hold of me. We're on Instagram as well, so you can do that. But if you have a question about anything, feel free to send it on in, and I will take my time out of my extraordinarily busy day. The schedule I keep would kill a normal man. You just have to take my word on that. But I will answer these questions in the world headquarters of the Wattsman Diesel House, i.e., my basement. Anyways, moving on here. So we got our first question. This question comes from Will. You can see right there. It says this. If there's a guy named Will, he's got a way. So let's go with this. My main question deals with the gray area in the industry of owner-operators versus company drivers. Ooh, yeah, there's some gray area there. Companies try and get around having to pay workers' comp for drivers and pay them as a 1099 subcontractor or, an independent contractor. And the 1099 is just a tax form that independent contractors get versus an actual employee. They then go on to provide equipment, i.e. a truck, to the driver. I'm guessing like a lease purchase type thing, maybe, I don't know, and force dispatch them. Providing equipment and force dispatching would mean that the driver should be an employee. I agree. Thus, they misclassify the driver, and only when something goes wrong does anyone find out. And and a lot of people could be held responsible. That's true. What do you recommend is the best way for a broker to confirm with a trucking company that the driver they are putting on the broker's load is a legitimate owner-operator? That is a long and good question. I guess kind of maybe the short answer to that is work with carriers that you absolutely trust. And I know that's easier said than done, but a carrier could say that this is an owner-operator and put a company guy on. A carrier could say we got a truck and try to broker it out themselves. I don't know if you've ever heard of double brokering. Anyways, but that's kind of a tough one. I mean, there are some documents that a carrier should have that an owner operator would have to fill out versus a company guy. Now, they probably won't let you see those documents, but I guess it can't hurt to ask if you're having some extra questions. But the owner operator and carrier argument is getting very interesting in that, there's some legislation out there that the government's trying to get through that even makes owner operators even more free of what companies would like. I've seen it out there where they're trying to say that the owner operator shouldn't even have to abide by appointment times, because that's telling them when to be somewhere and that kind of stuff. So they're trying to get away from even that, which I don't know how that would work. So, the owner operator / company driver is getting to be a very gray area. And I'm not exactly sure, but my initial response would be work with carriers that you can trust. And I know that there's some that are shady out there, and you just have to kind of weed those guys out. But I think that's about the only way, because I don't think the carriers will let you see all the documents that an owner operator signed, because there's some sensitive information on there that they probably don't want you to have. That would be my advice, is just to really find a good carrier or work with just owner operators. There's a ton of guys out there that have, their trucking authority and they're just a one-man show. So, you could find those guys as well. Again, I know this is easy to say, but those guys are out there and you can find them, and that would be a good way to know that you're working with a true owner operator. All right. Question number 2. I don't have a name on this one, so if this is your question, congratulations. Okay. So, what is the real solution to improving CSA scores? Ooh, are there contributors to why the scores aren't improving? CSA, how much time do we got here? Not much. Okay. So, the CSA, that is the basically the overall scoring process for safety on trucking companies. And so you get a CSA score. If you get violations, it goes against your CSA score. If you get in accidents, it goes against your CSA score. I mean, the CSA is a whole animal in and of itself, and maybe sometime I'll cover that. But for right now, is there any real solution to improving your CSA score? I hate to say this because it's not really an answer that people like to hear, but the only real solution to improving it is time. You got to think of your CSA score as like a credit score. Okay, there's really not much you can do to improve your credit score overnight. And the CSA score is unfortunately that way as well. You just have to make sure that if you do have problem drivers that are getting a lot of violations, that either A, you coach them and tell them to slow down or be careful, you can do some of that, or B, get rid of them so that they can get off your fleet there, and so you won't have those scores hit against you. But time is really the only thing that will improve your CSA score. Time and paying attention to the details. If you've got a driver that is running over all the time on his log books and he's getting caught with that, make sure that he knows he can't do that and really monitor them. Drivers will usually turn it on if they care. Some drivers don't care. But if they do care, they'll usually pay attention once they know that they're being monitored. So that's really the only solution to improving your CSA score is time. And I know that kind of sucks. You don't really want that, but that's really the only thing that you can do. So, okay, moving on. Question number 3 here's how do the big and even little DOT exemptions create picky road to safety? Create a picky road to safety. I swear I can read. So we're kind of dealing with this right now. Wintertime seems to be kind of the exemption time. And, before with COVID, we had this really nice big exemption where we didn't have to run logs basically. But even in there were some really small, during the COVID time, you didn't have to run logs if you were running a COVID, a necessary product load, basically any food or health care stuff or, cleaning stuff, anything like that. You could just run it all you want. But one thing that I saw a company get busted for was they were running those loads like that, but then they weren't logging the in-between. So they deliver in Atlanta and then they got to go pick something up in, Jacksonville, Florida. They weren't logging those miles between Atlanta and Florida, and they were getting busted for those miles. So, I mean, even with the big blanket exemptions, there are still little pieces that you have to watch out for. But right now, I know there's an exemption going on in Colorado where you could run diesel fuel, in a tanker. So, you got, and I know there's a couple other states involved, might be New Mexico and a couple others around them. But I know that exemption is going on right now. But here's the thing, if you run in Colorado, but then you cross over to a state that's not doing that, well, then you got to be back logging it. And a lot of times the drivers don't really remember to do that, which is a problem. And so they can get busted for doing that. And the other thing too is that, in fact, I just had a thing with this yesterday. A driver is running in a state that was exempt, which is fine, and he ran over his 14, which, you can do. But then he came back to a state that wasn't exempt, but he didn't make any notes on his logs. So if a DOT officer were to look at his logs, he'd get pulled over, do an inspection. DOT officer would look at that and go, well, you ran over yesterday, that's a violation, because he didn't have in the notes that he was in an exempt state. So, I mean, there's that's kind of one of those, that's the picky road to safety right there, is that there are exemptions out there, but they're not blanket exemptions. So you really still have to monitor. In fact, I think running with exemptions is even more difficult than running just without exemptions, because without, you just keep your logs and you just go on your merry way. But with the exemptions, you have to remember that you don't have to log this, but you have to log that. And then if you get mixed up or you don't make notes or whatever, all of a sudden you kind of got a really messy logbook that is ripe for the picking for any DOT officer. So my thing with exemptions is just make sure that you are logging everything correctly. And quite frankly, I mean, if even with exemptions, I always recommend like just run the logs normal. You know, if you have to run over a little bit here or there, that's fine. But you know, some guys when they get exemptions, man, they forget the whole log book, and that's where you get problems. So even if you're in an exempt state, still run your logs just normal. And if you go over a little bit, make a note in there saying why you did it and what you were hauling. That's the other important thing. Make sure you put what you're hauling in there in the shipping documents part, and then you should be you should be all right. But yeah, exemptions can be a little tricky if you don't still keep your logs up to date. All right, and the last question I've got, any advice for a brand new brokerage? No. No. Boy, that's a good question too. Well, I mean, I guess there's a couple things that there's a couple questions that I would ask back there. You know, one, are you your own brokerage or are you an agent for somebody? Because that works very different ways. Two, do you know what kind of product you're hauling? Because that'd be my first thing. I mean, I don't know, first, that'd be one of the big things. You know, I've seen times where new brokerages will just go after everything. And the problem is that you can't do that, because with the different types of trailers out there, there's different regulations for all that. I mean, do you want to be a brokerage for tanker stuff? Well, there's a whole huge deal with tankers. I mean, there's whole regulations, a whole new ballgame. Or do you want to just do reefer? You know, that's fine. But again, there's different aspects to that. So I guess my thing would be figure out what you want to haul. What do you want to specialize in? You know, if you're getting into a brokerage and you've never been in trucking, that's a very tough spot to be in as well, because you probably don't know a lot of the stuff. So, you know, I would recommend working for a brokerage first. But if you've got that and you go in, figure out what your niche is. I mean, do you want to be a reefer broker? Do you want to be a tanker? You know, the big brokers out there, they can do it all, which is fine. They've got hundreds of people to do it. But if you're just starting out, my big thing is to find your niche for the brokerage. You know, if you want to be a reefer, dry van, flatbed, figure out which niche you want to go after, then go after that. You know, and the other thing is, don't be afraid to call customers. You're going to hear a ton of no's. Okay, you're brand new. The thing with MC numbers and stuff like that is it's all about longevity. So, you know, if someone's really picky on that, they'll look you up, see that you have your MC, or, you know, I shouldn't say MC, your brokerage authority number. They're going to look you up, see it's like 2 weeks old, probably not going to want to deal with you. Maybe they will, I don't know. But they're probably not going to want to deal with you. So it just takes time. So, you know, you can jump in, you know, strong and quit your day job and join the brokerage, but it's going to be a tough start off. But like I said, find your niche, find good carriers to work with too. Really, you know, invest in your carriers. Figure out if they're good. Figure out where they haul, where their main lanes are. There's a ton of programs, ton of software out there right now where you can really dive into carriers and make sure that they're good ones. But yeah, find a group of carriers. You know, I know you'll have to use the load boards to start off with. That's fine. A lot of people use load boards. There's nothing wrong with that. But once you build up a good repertoire with some carriers, it's a lot better. It's a lot better to just go with them. So I guess any advice to a brokerage is, you know, are you an agent with somebody or are you on brokerage? That'd be the first thing. They both have their advantages and disadvantages, so you'll have to figure that out for yourself if that's something that works for you. Usually if you're an agent, you have to pay the other brokerage a piece of it, but then you don't have to deal with a lot of the headache that comes with the brokerage. Versus if you're your own brokerage, you don't have to pay anybody for that, but then you do have to deal with everything. So it's up to you. But yeah, really find your niche, because every type of trailer, every type of load has their own quirks. And if you don't know the flatbed world, then don't get into flatbed, okay? Stick with the world you know and really go after that and really hammer hard on some customers. You know, find some local guys. Just take a drive around. Look at warehouses. Look at DCs in your area. Maybe not DCs, but, you know, look at the manufacturing places around you there and write them down, research them. I can't emphasize that enough. Research them before you call them so that you have some clue of what you're talking about. So anyway, well, that's it. Hopefully that advice was good. Hopefully you understood it. But, yeah, that's all the questions I got. So again, if you have questions, feel free to either comment below or send me a message or anything. You know, we're on Instagram. You could just fire off a question, like I said, about anything that you got, and I will take them. I will pass them through our email screener. We do have a full-time email screener that will look. She's very good. She's my cat, but she's very good. She actually can read well, which is surprising. We're thinking about taking her on the circus tour. So anyways, but that is all I got for today. I appreciate you watching. If you want, share this video if you get anything out of it. But until next time, I am Sam with Ask Sam Anything.